Is Lord Young right? Are you actually better off than you were before? Despite all this talk of recession, do you actually have more cash jingling about in your pocket than you did earlier? Or do you think Lord Young is out of touch, insulated and unaware of life in the real world? Number 10 made it clear last night that the PM was deeply unimpressed with Lord Young's comments. Labour's Treasury spokesman said people worried about their jobs will be disgusting by Lord Young's insulting claim they've never had it so good. And last night, Lord Young himself said he'd written to Mr Cameron to apologise. Profoundly, his words. His statement said, "I deeply regret the comments I made, and I entirely understand the offence they will cause. They were both inaccurate and insensitive." But I'm asking, were they? Or do you think there was more than a grain of truth in them, acceptable or not? And joining me once more on the programme, to my great pleasure, Jonathan Davis, economist and wealth manager. Good morning, Jonathan.
Hello, Vanessa.
Hi there. Well, we've never had it so good, according to Lord Young, who subsequently apologised for having said so, but I'm sure he must have meant it at the time or he wouldn't have said it. Is it true that for many people the recession hasn't bitten and actually times have never been so good?
You know, it's amazing that in the 21st century a politician cannot tell the truth. And as you said, Cameron has slapped him down and he's made an apology. It is outlandish that we've got to this situation that a politician cannot say it as he sees it. The reality is that the planet Earth had the biggest recession since the 1950s in 2008 to 2009, but Britain didn't really experience it, as the guy said. Now, in effect, what he was talking about, as you just said, those with mortgages, and let's face it, that was the majority, their mortgage costs went through the floor. In other words, the then government and the Bank of England bailed out the profligate, those who had borrowed beyond belief. Unfortunately, the prudent, those who didn't get into this nonsense of borrowing the size of a Latin American economy and putting it into a cardboard box, those who have been renting, the prudent, and the retirees who are savers, they've been hammered. So the prudent have bailed out the profligate. Now, where Lord Young got it wrong, and where he said, "You've never had it so good," well, that is grossly inaccurate, because we are in the depths of depression, but the reality is that most people have not yet experienced it.
So that sounds to me as if you're a harbinger of doom, a male Cassandra, and you're going to tell me that even those who are now splashing around their cash because their mortgages, as you beautifully put it, have gone through the floor, so they've got more money than they've had before, more money than they expected to have, are going to feel the sting. Are you saying pretty soon, or can they still think they've got a few good years left?
No, I think the good times are definitely over. And, you know, those who saved massively on their monthly mortgage costs, it is remarkable to me that they didn't then do the prudent thing and reduce their mortgages. Instead, what they did was they kept on spending. So they haven't saved that massive windfall. Thus, as you can possibly hear, I'm on a train platform right now.
Yes.
What's going to happen is that housing prices are just going to continue to fall. We saw asking prices fall over 3% in 1 month just a couple of weeks ago, and that's going to continue for the next couple of years. So those who have not reduced their mortgages, they are going to be hit very, very hard. And on top of that, because of government and Bank of England policies, in due course, we're going to have higher and higher living costs. Fuel's going to go up, bread and milk's going to go up, electricity and lighting's going to go up. In other words, savings are not going to go up, but the cost of living is going to go up, and on top of that, the cost of debt will eventually rise as well. Yes, the good times are over. It's going to be very, very hard. If people think that we're in difficulty just now, I'm sorry, they need to wake up to reality. People have no idea how bad it's going to get over the next couple of years.
May I just say, those people who were suddenly in the money because their mortgage costs had gone down, they were mostly advised, I think, don't pay off the greater capital sum of your mortgage because this is the cheapest loan you'll ever get, because it's pointless to do so. You might as well enjoy the cash. Were their advisors wrong when they told them don't pay off the capital sum of your mortgage with this extra money?
Not specifically. It was appropriate to not pay off the debt in that sense, but what was totally inappropriate was to go and spend it on luxuries. What they should have done was hoard it, until, in due course, interest rates rise, or they lose their job and they need those savings.
You say hoard it, but everybody knows now that it's scarcely worth saving a bean because the interest rates are so low that you end up losing money by saving money, don't you? The money that you put away ends up being worth less in real terms at the end of a year than it would have been if you'd spent it. Is that right?
Well, again, that's taking the relatively short-term view of things.
Yes.
As it happens, you take 10 minutes on the internet and you can find 2 or 2.5% interest, which isn't a disaster. Although most people think it's 0.5% Actually, you can get 2.5 out there. And taking a long-term view, if, as we know, there's going to be significantly higher unemployment, if, as we know, house prices are going to fall, people are going to get into difficulty. They're going to need those savings. To have gone out and spent it on luxuries with all of the big picture problems out there was just beyond profligate. It was just stupid.
And yet, Jonathan, we were told by Gordon Brown, we've been told by successive ministers, spend for the good of the economy. If everybody stops spending, if I decide I don't want to replace my curtains because I want to save the money, the curtain man goes out of business, he can't buy a pair of new shoes for his daughter, the shoe man goes out of business, and there's a horrible spiral of recession and misery, whereas if I do replace the curtains, then the curtain man can buy the shoes, and on we go.
And that is classical economics. The problem is the end consumer is reducing their savings or indeed getting further and further into debt to keep the other guy going. Well, ultimately it doesn't help the individual. And indeed you and I talked a month or so ago about the Bank of England repeating that same thing. But, you know, we can talk about this till the cows come home, and we can talk about the welfare cheats, the housing benefit cuts, the tax evaders. But, Vanessa, it doesn't even come close to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is the banking industry. The banking industry has bankrupted us. You know, if we sorted out the welfare cheats, apparently I'm told we'd get £1.5 billion. We just gave £850 billion to the bankers. 850. All of the issues that I hear about in the media, they pale into insignificance in terms of how much we're giving to bankers. If we sort out the banking industry, then we sort out all of our economic and societal ails. That I can guarantee you.
Do you think Gordon Brown shouldn't have bailed out the banks in the way that he did?
Absolutely. No way it should. And you know, he talked about saving the world. And every central bank, every every Prime Minister and President in the world bailed out the banks. That doesn't mean they were right, because look what we're left with. We're left with higher taxes, lower public spending, and I tell you, a far more difficult way of life for years and years because we gave such a vast amount to the banking system. If we let the banks go down, we could have saved the depositors, and the bankers and the shareholders of bankers would have lost a lot of money, but you know what? They're a tiny proportion of the mass of the population who are landed with all this debt. And still the banks, this is what doesn't come out in the media. I'm grateful for the opportunity to say it. Still the banks have massively negative balance sheets because of falling property prices, commercial and residential. And unfortunately, the banks are going to come back for more. The Bank of England's probably going to print more money. And all it's going to do, yet again, it's going to be an elastoplast on major organ failure. We need to sort out the banking system. We must say to them, we'll never bail you out again. Why don't they? You know, George Osborne, you know, we're getting Gordon Brown here, and he was a disaster as a chancellor and a financial manager. But George Osborne, he's talking about the banking levy. They're raising £2.5 billion. He's sorting out the bankers. He's not even coming close to sorting out the bankers. £2.5 billion against 850. Do the math.
Let me ask you final question. Lord Young, you've never had it so good. Hours later, he apologises, as he puts it, profoundly. Is he right or is he wrong? Is he right in saying that for a certain section of the community, times are good, or at least appear to be good at the moment, or is he wrong to have said it in the first place?
And that is the financial and political elite. And I know that sounds like some sort of communist comment, but, you know, people should know I'm the most capitalist person here. We do not have capitalism in banking. We have socialism, because when they make money, and when they lose money, we pay for it. That is not capitalism, that's socialism. Capitalism is they would have been let go bust. So no, the majority of folk in the country are finding it difficult and are going to find it even more difficult. There's going to be, they talk about 500,000 extra unemployed. I actually think it's going to be 1 million extra unemployed. And on top of that, house prices are going to plummet. Well, they're continuing to plummet, should I say. And on top of that, the cost of living is going to soar. People have no idea how bad it's going to get. They need to wake up to reality.
I wish I could say it's been congenial and delightful and cheerful talking to you, but I fear it hasn't. But I thank you very much indeed for your contribution once more. Jonathan Davis, thank you very much indeed. Obviously, all these views are views of Jonathan Davis, not the views of the BBC. But what do you make of what he said?